This is the first trip. Now, we just get hired. There's a big, huge snowstorm. I remember Carl Jackson, the running back coach, had to go to Kmart and buy big boots because he didn't own any snow boots. And he had this 3-piece olive green suit on, handsome guy, classic guy. So we're in this middle of this blizzard out, and Hayden goes, come on, Mac, we're going to go see your guy. So we get in the car and we take off. We're about 10 minutes into the ride. I'm real nervous anyway because I got the head coach with me. I'm used to driving in the snow, and he's not in Texas. He knows I'm a little bit nervous. He goes, Mac, I'm really glad to have you on the staff. I said, Coach, you have no idea how proud I am, how honored I am. But I'm going to do everything I can to make you proud and make you feel like it was a great decision, because you don't know that right now. But someday I want you to really look back on it and feel like it was a good decision that you made. He said, Mac, you don't want any of the coaches I ever want to hire. I don't want anybody on my staff that won't screw, fight, or hold a light. I'd never heard that one before. And I thought about just for a second. He was serious when he said it. And I looked at him. I said, Coach, I'm good on the first two, and I think I can hold a light. And we laughed and laughed. I found out later on, hold a light was smoke a cigarette. And he used to say that when he was coaching in the Marines, he would tell that to his coaches on the staff with the Marines, because those guys all smoked cigarettes back then. But anyway, that was my first real experience of the sense of humor, is like you're talking about, of Hayden Fry. And he was just a beauty. And he was the best thing that could have ever happened to Iowa football after so many years of tough losses, bad years, losing seasons, bad morale, bad attitude, and yet this core of Iowa fans that would keep coming to Kinnick Stadium to cheer for the Hawks. So to be a part of that was just incredible, guys.
Welcome to the Gallery and Hurley Unfiltered podcast, Iowa Football Rewind.
Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast player to get a behind-the-scenes look that you won't find anywhere else.
Could you tell when he got there that things were going to change immediately? Or was it like day one, you're like, okay, this is just a different scenario? Or was it took a while to get his style and those things going?
Yeah, great question. I was sitting out at the house. I lived right on the same street that went by City High School, Morningside Drive, grew up there. And I was sitting at the house with my mom and dad, and we had it on the radio. And Bump Elliott said, I want to introduce all of you, because Bump was a one-man search committee. Nowadays, you got committees. And when I interviewed at Iowa State, there was 22 people in the president's office. And we all sat, and they have all these committees and all these people. And Bump had hired Frank Lauterbur. It didn't work out. Bump had hired Bob Cummings, and it didn't work out. Bump was no dummy, and he knew this was my third hire. Guess what? If this one doesn't work out, guess who's going to lose the job? Bump Elliott. He knew it. And he said it publicly, and he said it privately years beyond that after he'd hired Hayden. He knew it. But there was just something special. I didn't know hardly anything. I knew the name. I'd heard of Hayden Fry, but I didn't know a damn thing about North Texas. And I knew Mean Joe Green had played there, but that was about it. I didn't know one thing else. So Hayden comes in, and I remember one of the first meetings, and Bernie Wyatt and I were retained off the old staff. He was the full-time coach. I was the part-time coach. And I remember in that first meeting, and there was no doubt who he was talking to, but he just said, I want everybody in this room to know your loyalty better be to one school and to one person. And whoever's paying your damn paycheck, you better be loyal to them. He was talking to me and Bernie because we were with Bob Cummings. Bernie Wyatt played with Bob Cummings. Bernie Wyatt played a coach for Bob Cummings. I played for Bob Cummings. I coached with him. And he was letting the two of us know, your ass better be loyal to me, because I'm paying your paycheck now, not Bob Cummings. But it was just kind of like, here we go. And then I remember we had a big, huge map, great big map. There was a big chunk of the wall in there. And we started putting up the stickers and the thumbtacks and where are we going? And here's a string from Iowa City, Iowa. We weren't real technological back then. And we had a thumbtack with a big string on it, and we put a big circle with a pencil around how far we wanted to really go out and really base our recruiting in the Midwest. But then let's go to the East Coast, where Bernie Wyatt has all these connections. Let's go to Texas, because those guys had a lot of connections there. Let's go to the JCs in California, because Bill Snyder had been out there before. And but you could just tell right away, to answer your question, organization, no detail too small. There's a plan for everything. They didn't know much about Iowa other than when they showed them the films down in Denton, Texas, Bill Brazier and Hayden Fry kept saying, how the hell do they have people in the stands watching this shitty football? They're playing back. They're losing all these games. And they're crazy. These fans must be nuts. Can you imagine if we win games and we take that job and we go to Iowa City, Iowa, and we win games? Can you imagine what it's going to be like up there? And in the end, that was one of the really great selling things, was watching Bob Cummings' teams struggle to win games, and yet this great, amazing fan base. But there was no doubt, to answer your question, a long answer to a short question, no doubt. Every detail mattered. The little things mattered. There's going to be a plan for this. There's going to be a vision. Now, little do we know then he's going to be wearing white pants and sunglasses on game day, because nobody had ever seen that before in college football. And then all the Fryisms and all the things. And first time we were in a meeting, he's talking about a high porch picnic. And I'm looking around thinking, I must be the dumbass here. I don't know what he's talking about. What is that? High porch picnic. All the things that he would talk about. But there was a rhyme and a reason behind all of it. And he had this amazing ability to grab your heart, grab your mind, pull you in tight, motivate you, inspire you, and along the way, be an entertainer, entertain people too, which he was amazing at. But the bottom line was, he didn't come to Iowa City to lose. He didn't want anybody around him that never would think that we could not win at Iowa. And it was trainers, it was managers, it was players, it was coaches, it was the fans, it was the administration. Anybody that touched the program, if you didn't think we could win, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out of here. Just get out of here. I don't want you around this program. So that was the message that was sent right away, and we all bought into that right from the beginning.
Yeah, super strong mindset, right? That continued for 40 years or whatever it was, for sure. Talk a little bit more about your recruiting when you first started, like how that was, and walk through what that was like and how you got your legs doing that.
Hayden had me in the Midwest right from the beginning: Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And if you start getting players, that's when you start developing a reputation that you can close deals, build relationships. As you guys know, it's all about NIL right now and transfer. And thank God that they're taking care of student athletes and all that stuff. But there's very little nowadays talked about academics, about system, about coaches, about off the field stuff, about taking a 6'7", 300-pounder that might be this looks like a big man on the outside, but he's still a little boy on the inside, and taking him from a boy to a man. Most of the time now, it's about how much can you pay me. Now, the young man or the recruit may not be asking that, but mom or dad or the agent or the uncle or the grandpa or the best friend or whoever it is going to be communicating that. Back then, it was about building relationships. And the two of the first that I was able to get to come to Iowa, you really find out when you can recruit any of us in the profession. When you've had 20 years of losing, facilities stink, were ridiculously bad. The fundraising and the salaries and everything else was in the dark ages. And you go out and you still get young men to say, I want to be part of that something. I want to be part of it. You're not coming because of bowl games, because there ain't been any of them. You're not coming because of the Big Ten championship. There ain't been any of them. You ain't coming because you've been beating ranked teams, because we haven't been doing that. But the vision of Hayden Fry, the relationships that we built, when he walked into a home, as you guys know, there was something special about Hayden Fry. And two of the first guys that I was able to get when we hadn't won yet, the first one was Reggie Roby. And you guys can appreciate him. You were kickers, you were punters. I know you may not agree with me, but in my lifetime, I'm 72. The two best that I was ever around, that I ever witnessed, was Reggie Roby and Ray Guy. Those were my two best that I was ever around. We don't go to the Rose Bowl. We don't win the Big Ten championship in 1981 if it's not for Reggie. An elite defense and an offense that was just okay. Bill Snyder and Hayden Fry don't want to hear that, but that's what it was. The two best defenses I was around in 45 years was the 1981 defense at Iowa and the national championship defense in Florida when we beat Bobby Stoops' Oklahoma team. They were averaging 54 points. We held them to 14. We won 24-14. And those were the two best defenses I was around. That year we had Reggie, and he would flip the field. No one ever returned kickoffs because he was our kickoff guy. And then the long field goals, he'd hit those. And then Tommy Nickel would take care of the short ones. But Reggie flipping the field, and our defense with Andre Tippett and Mark Bortz and Pat Dean and Bobby Stoops and Mark and Mel Cole and Todd Simonson and Tracy Crocker and Lou King and Pecky Webb and Brian Stratus. Just a great lineup. But those guys were really incredible. But the first game, you guys can appreciate this. There was no early offers back in 1979. There was no early offers. But we'd heard a lot of good things about Reggie Roby. I called Mike Woodley, who's a real good friend of mine. We ended up coaching together as GAs at Iowa. He was on my staff at Iowa State. His son, Joe, was my captain at Iowa State. He's the head coach at Drake now. I called Woody and I said, tell me about Reggie Roby. So I know the family real well. He says, I know Mike. Mike could have been a big-time punter in college too, but he took a baseball contract, made some money, and then didn't really make it in the bigs in Major League Baseball. But he said, Reggie's unbelievable, Mac. You got to go watch him. So first game that year, Bar Luis is playing Marshalltown. I run down. That's my first game I'm going to go to in the fall. Reggie kicks off, and the ball goes between the uprights. You can appreciate that. You guys were really good kickers. Between the uprights, I'm standing there watching this like, did I just see what I thought I just saw? And then he's kicking field goals, and it's going into, there's houses outside of the stadium there in Marshalltown, and he's hitting the houses that are way outside the goalposts. And I'm going, this guy's something. So I came back and told Coach Fry that, and I said, Coach, we got it. No doubt we've got to go after this guy. So that was my first big one. We were in the Ramada Inn the night before signing date. It's Hayden Fry, me. I'm either going to get a raise. He's going to call me at midnight. No cell phones, guys. He's going to call me at midnight and tell me he's either coming to Iowa or going to Wisconsin. Those were his final two with a bunch of offers. They had put a trunk load of baseball gear, football gear. Reggie wanted to play baseball, all this stuff, opened up the trunk in red and white of Wisconsin Badgers and showed the whole thing to him, and his mouth was drooling. After I heard that, I got a Roby jersey with the number 7 on it. I took it to his basketball game because he was a hell of a basketball player too. And I showed it to him. I had it in my briefcase, and I just showed him the one jersey. I didn't have a trunk full of stuff. I just had the one jersey. I'll never forget the look on his face. But he had the poker face, wouldn't tell me. I knew we had a hell of a shot. Reggie and I had a great relationship. The night before, we're there at midnight at the Ramada Inn. He calls the front desk. I run up there, and the first thing he says is, Coach Mack? I said, yeah. He goes, it's Reggie. I go, hey, Reg. He goes, I got some bad news for you. And it's just quiet, and I'm stunned. And he goes, I'm going to be a Hawkeye. And I'm screaming and yelling. The lady at the front desk was looking at me like I got 3 heads. She thought she was going to call the police. I think I was going nuts. I run into the bar where Hayden and I were having a beer and a sandwich. And I holler. I said, he's a Hawk. He's a Hawk. He gets up and starts dancing, had his black boots that somebody had given him with the Tiger Hawks on him. He's dancing around. Here's the head coach of the Iowa football. And he's so freaking cranked up. So Reggie was one of my first. Then I got John Alt to come from Minnesota when we hadn't won yet. He ended up being an All-American for us. He's in the Circle of Fame in Arrowhead Stadium, played 13 years with the Kansas City Chiefs. All team, incredible. What I'm getting to is when I start getting some of those guys, then you start getting a reputation that you can go other places and start recruiting. And I just always felt I had an ace. If I can get a guy to come to Iowa City, Hayden's going to close the deal. If I can just get a guy to come, whether it's Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Barry Alvarez and I'd go back east, Bernie Wyatt and I would go back east. We can just get them on our campus, get them there and experience Iowa City in that program. Hayden's going to close the deal. And that's why the recruiting, it changed the minute he got there, the day that he got there, the week, the year that he got there. We started getting guys that other people wanted. And it really hadn't been going on like that for a long time in Iowa. And you could go on and on for days about recruiting stories, but Hayden would get in that home and it wasn't long and he'd have them in the palm of his hand. And most of the stories he told were true, but not all of them. But most of them were true. And as you guys know, he had the gift of gab. I remember we were in, this is one of those stories that I don't think was true. Coach Fry, I'm sorry. God bless you. Don't hit me with that up there. But we were in a home. It was Nick Bell's home, And Barry Alvarez, and after a while, Alvarez and I, wherever we went, we'd get players. And Hayden would go, I don't know about turning you two guys loose, but wherever you go, you get good players. So we went to Vegas, of all places, to recruit Nick Bell. And we ended up getting a commitment. That was a hell of a deal. But Hayden's in the home, and he says, you won't believe who I've shared a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with out in the oil fields of Texas. There's Nick and all his family around. He goes, George Bush. George was the president at the time, and they're just blown away. No, Coach, George Bush, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Oh, yeah, we're good friends. We're good friends. I think he met him one time. But that story, they loved it. They just ate it up. You shared a peanut butter jelly sandwich with George Bush. They loved it. But he could come up with, he had a lot of stories that were true, of course, but they were embellished a little bit now and then. And he was so good with people. And the rest is history. What an amazing job he did in all those years at Iowa.
It's funny you say that. I think Coach Triplett said he painted within the lines, but he did it liberally, is what he said.
Yeah, saying the same thing.
It's a perfect setup, yeah.
Trip's the best, just one of the all-time best. I knew him all those years. He was a high school coach, and then he was at Iowa State when I'm at Iowa, and then he's at Iowa when I'm at Iowa State. Love Trip. I'll never forget. He was he 2 or 3 years older than me? And I don't know if you ever heard of this one, but he was playing wide receiver. Now, he doesn't look like a wide receiver, but Trip was a good player, good high school, good player. And he was one of those guys that was just work his butt off and loyal and hardworking and tough. And you just loved him, and didn't have great speed and didn't have great athleticism. He just found a way. But we were playing in Kinnick, and I can't remember. Damn, I wish I could remember the team. We were playing in Kinnick, a home game. And like a lot of the passes back then, it was way overthrown or underthrown. Trip goes up for one. This is how focused he was. The ball gets way overthrown. He runs right through the sideline, the Iowa bench, and goes up over the railings that are there and catches the ball that is going into the stands. Now, of course, it was out of bounds, but it was so Trip that he was just so focused that he was going to run right through our bench and go catch a damn ball that was going over the railing of the bottom rows of Kinnick Stadium. But Trip's a dandy, and he made major contributions to the game of football, whether it was high school or college in the state of Iowa. Real special guy.
Yeah, he was our special teams coach. Yeah, so we got to know him really well.
Oh, yeah, just the best. One of the all-time best. Coaching family, his son's coach, as you guys know, and Trip's a dandy, man. He's just a dandy. So he and Bill Window are real close friends. Windy was the defensive lineman. I was an offensive lineman. Windy used to try and break my jaw at practice. He was older. He ended up getting about 8 years in the NFL. I remember I just used to hate it when they'd call a trap and Windauer was the tackle over there, because he just old school and just whack you and just blow your ass up. And he and Trip to this day are really good friends. A few months ago, the doorbell rang here in Sarasota, and I go to the door. I'm not expecting anybody, and here's Bill Windauer standing at the door, and we're high-fiving and hugging, and he and Trip were getting together up in Tampa because Trip comes down to get out of the snow of Iowa every year for about a week, and they were getting together up there, and so that was fun. But I didn't mean to get off on a tangent there, but boy, what a dandy, what a great person, great coach Dave Triplett was.
Oh, that's great. We love the tangents. Let's go back. You mentioned Bernie Wyatt. At least in the guys that we have talked to in the 90s, he was really instrumental in getting a lot of those guys from out east coming. Was he always that prolific of a recruiter as well?
Yeah. I was single for many years. I used to go back with Bernie all the time. And here's what Bernie was fantastic at. First of all, he never used a map. We didn't have GPS and we didn't have cell phones and all that, okay? So I was back there with him easily on the East Coast probably 35, 40 times. Bernie knew every school to go to. You have to pull out the map and get on the phone and stop at a 7-Eleven, go to the payphone to go to the house. But for schools, he had never any trouble finding them. And he had his right foot on the accelerator, left foot on the brake. He'd be yelling out the windows and all that New York, New Jersey traffic. He could go drive better than cab drivers in New York and New Jersey, knew exactly where he was going. But what I heard over and over and over, guys, because of the respect that the high school coaches had for Bernie Wyatt, they'd tell those recruits in front of Bernie, and when I was there many times with him, trying to take mental notes, trying to help recruit. But for me, selfishly, I wanted to learn from one of the great recruiters in America, and that was Bernie Wyatt on the East Coast. All these coaches would say, I'm not telling you you're going to Iowa with your final choice. But my respect for Bernie Wyatt, because of my relationship and my respect, I am telling you, one of your 5 visits is going to be the University of Iowa. Now, you make up the decision after that. And if you need me as a resource, meaning the high school coach, to talk things through the final decision, we'll sit down and talk, and your family and I will sit down and talk. But I'm telling you right now, one of your 5 visits, you get a guy that's got 10, 15, 20, 25 choices to visit, and the high school coach is saying, you're going to Iowa. You're on one of your visits. It meant so much because we always felt, and Bernie always felt like we just get them on campus, we'll blow them away with hospitality, relationships, fans, food, the atmosphere, downtown Iowa City, the social life. We just got to get them there because most of them think, Iowa, what do you got? Pigs, cows, potatoes, wheat, corn? What the hell you have in Iowa? They don't really know unless they come. And Bernie would get all these guys, and he got really good players before Hayden came. He got good players when Bob Cummings was there, but he really hit some home runs when he was there. And probably the biggest one in all those years helped us win that Big Ten championship in 1981. He knew Frank Verducci, senior, out in Barringer High School in Barringer, New Jersey, and he knew about Andre Tippett. Tip didn't have enough grades, test score, a little bit of combination. So Frank Verducci and Bernie had it all set up to put Tip in a junior college in Iowa for 1 year, get his academics right, and then let's come to Iowa. And we knew that he was a 3rd-degree black belt. We knew he was a sensational player, came up a little short on test scores. He went there to Ellsworth. I remember sitting up there with Bernie, and Vern Thompson was the head coach at Ellsworth. And Vern's trying to talk Bernie into giving him 1 more year with Tip. Is there any chance we could keep him for 1 more year? Because he's just tearing up the junior colleges. Bernie, I remember, goes, Vern Thompson, Dad, you know what the chances are that you're going to get Andre Tippett for another year? Slim and none and slim. There ain't no chance Andre Tippett. He's coming to Iowa City, Iowa. So drop that conversation. And that was it. Tip came in, and the rest is history. Unanimous All-American. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. One of the great players. I stay in touch with him. He's still connected to still working for the New England Patriots. But Bernie would just get those guys. And then through all these guys, did he bat 1,000? No, there was mistakes made. Like we made mistakes in Iowa. We made mistakes in the Midwest. We made mistakes in California. We made mistakes in Texas. You don't want to make many of them because that's what happened for so many years at Iowa. Coaches didn't know what the hell they were doing, bad evaluations, and we came up short. But Bernie didn't miss on many. And when you're going to come all the way from the East Coast to Iowa City, he just took such pride in his ability to evaluate and make sure we're getting good players. And then after many good players, you got the Harmon brothers, you got Andre Tippett, you got Pat Dean, was an all Big Ten All-American nose guard for me on that 81 Rose Bowl. It's just endless. There were Devon Mitchell, Nate Creer, Owen Gill. I remember watching practice with Bernie 3 or 4 times out there. Owen Gill, Devon Mitchell, and Nate Creer were all on the same high school team. And we're standing on the sidelines at practice. This is how bad it was, guys. There's rocks, there's sticks, there's broken glass, there's no grass on the practice fields. And Bernie's telling these guys, you'll never have to practice like this again the rest of your lives. You come to Iowa, we have real grass on our practice fields. And I just remember, and they were so appreciative. And we got all 3 of them. They all ended up being really good players, and 2 of them played in the NFL. But I'll never forget that. And then the other thing, and I'll shut up about it, but Bernie would take me back to the East Coast at Thanksgiving. And they have Turkey Day games back there. I don't know if you guys were ever heard of that or were back there, but they start playing games at 9 o'clock in the morning on Thanksgiving Day on the East Coast. So Bernie'd have his Goombas lined up for me and his Italian Mafia, and I'd be going with these 2 guys, and we'd go hit a quarter here, a quarter there. Bernie would go to these schools, make sure they saw the Hawkeye gear, evaluate, but most of the evaluations were done. You're there just letting them know we're there at your game. And the best thing about that, we'd go every year. I bet I did that for probably 11, 12 years with Bernie, just the 2 of us. But we'd go opposite. The best part about it, at the end of the day, nobody got to see more games than Bernie and I did. No one. And at the end of the day, his wife's, Barb's family would have us all over at this Italian Thanksgiving feast with about 6 or 7 rounds of food. And that was the best thing about going back there with Bernie on Thanksgiving Day. But he got great players no matter where he came. And then Bernie and I both left Iowa. I felt like I needed to do it if I was going to have a chance to be a head coach. I had to go be a coordinator. When we went to Wisconsin, they were horrible. We won one game our first year. But without jumping around, my point is Bernie comes to Wisconsin, starts doing the same thing. He's not even coaching. He's our recruiting coordinator. And he goes and gets Ron Dane, who ends up being the Heisman Trophy winner at Wisconsin. Guess who recruited him? Bernie Wyatt. When we had our 81 Rose Bowl reunion, guys, Bernie didn't want to go. He was having some dementia issues. Bernie and I were always real close, just great mutual respect. Loved him, just loved Bernie. And I'd called him about 3 or 4 times. And finally, the last time I got upset, he wasn't going to come. I said, hey, Bern, you got a whole bunch of those guys coming from the East Coast, starting with Andre Tippett. If I can travel 7 states to come to a reunion, your ass can travel 7 blocks and come over there even for an hour. And he hung up on me. Then I called back, and his wife, Barb, got on the phone. I said, hey, Barb, somehow, somewhere, you got to get him to come. Bernie came. She talked him into it. Guess who had more fun than anybody? Bernie Wyatt. He took pictures with all those East Coast kids. They loved him up. He felt so good. He was one of the last guys to leave. And a few months later, he passed away. Thank God he came back. Thank God Bernie came back. Felt the love and respect from those guys and from all of us. Because I'm just telling you, Bernie was a good, solid coach. He was an elite recruiter. And there's no way we go to the 81 and 85 Rose Bowls and win Big Ten championships those years when I was there without Bernie's recruiting. No way.
I think that players just said they trusted him and they knew they were going to be far away from home and they just felt like he would take care of them.
No doubt. No doubt. That's a really hard thing to do. It's tough enough, as you guys know, when you're going away from home and you're not too far away. You guys weren't too far away from Iowa City, but you're talking about East Coast all the way to Iowa City. That's hard now. That's tough. Leave your family, leave your girlfriend, leave your coaches, leave your culture, leave all that. But Bernie did such a phenomenal job. And there were plenty of guys that thought about quitting. 99% of them stayed. And it was because of Bernie's relationship with their family, with their high school coaches, with the kid that came to Iowa. To stick with it and hang with us, and we're going to do some real special things. And boy, did they. We had some phenomenal contributions from those guys on the East Coast.
Yeah, everybody talked super highly of him. They were like, he did what he said he was going to do. And there was guys that were in the same schools that had gone previous, and they were just like that trust factor that just were like, yeah, we'll come and we'll play our asses off for you. So yeah, it was interesting to hear that. I'd never met him, so.
You would have loved it. But he knew he was right. He broke Jimmy Brown's rushing record on Long Island to this day. He broke Jimmy Brown's rushing record in high school. Bernie played at Amityville, New York, Amityville High School. He showed me the record. I was in the high school. How cool is that now? And Bernie he was an MVP on a Rose Bowl team at Iowa. Bernie Wyatt. But he didn't want people to know that. He didn't want to make a big deal out of it. And he didn't want anybody to make a fuss over it. But I always did, and I always do that. And Bernie was so freaking modest and so humble. But I let a lot of people, because that'll get people's attention. And that'll get, when you say, yeah, this is Bernie Wyatt, and he beat Jimmy Brown's rushing record on Long Island, New York, his high school rushing record. And they go, no, he didn't. Yeah, he did. Bernie was a hell of a football player. They recruited him. Whitey Pure recruited him on Forrest Abishevsky's staff as a running back, and then he ended up playing in the secondary. He was a hell of a player. And there were some games where he actually went both ways, played some running back, played some slot, played some defensive back. And Bob Cummings kept him. And then thank God, Coach Fry kept him when he came in too. But the list is endless of the guys, and a whole bunch of them will be back at that 85 reunion. And there'll be guys that come back on that team too that Bernie had recruited. And we'll be talking about him, and we'll be showing our love and our respect for him, even though he's gone now. Bernie's one of those guys that he passed away, but his spirit will never die. His legacy will never die. People will remember him for a long time to come because of the impact he made on the Hawkeye football program. Before I mention this too, guys, there was 3 high schools forever right now. Iowa City, Regina, Iowa City, City High, Iowa City West. Bernie was the head coach at Iowa City, Regina when Bob Cummings hired him. He was coaching high school football at Regina. And then Bob Cummings hired him and then got him involved in the recruiting, and then Hayden did. And then he just gave all those great years to Iowa and Wisconsin to help us win lots of games. And Bernie won't come back, but Barry, the Ohio State-Wisconsin game, they're bringing back Barry Alvarez's 3 Rose Bowl champion teams. And Bernie recruited a bunch of those guys. And
Yeah.
we'll go back for that. I was there for the first one. We won the first Rose Bowl in the history of the school, which was 94. And Bernie did the same thing. Relationships, communication, history, track record, tremendous respect at all those coaches that knew him. And he, just from being back there all those years, and Bernie'd go head to head with Penn State. He didn't give a damn. He'd go head to head with Maryland. He'd go head to head with Pittsburgh, Big Ten schools that were out there. Of course, Penn State was not in the Big Ten at the time. Neither was Rutgers, neither was Maryland, but we were going head to head with all those teams. And any of those teams in the Big East, Bernie didn't care who it was. It wasn't like, oh, Penn State's recruiting him. I can't beat Joe Pa. He didn't give a damn. He'd go right after those same kind of guys and get his share.
Yeah, that's great. The question I have is, going back just a little bit, when you saw Andre Tippett, did you realize he was like that generational of a talent? Did he stand out that much at that age?
Yeah. Bernie showed it. He showed us the high school tape, looked like a freak. We saw the Ellsworth tape. Nobody could block him. And then the first, it's a great question. I remember this now. First scrimmage we have in Kinnick, it's the old turf. We had the old turf. It was hard as a rock. It was just, damn, there was hardly any cushion left. I remember we got the first scrimmage. That was 2 days in August. Tips there. We got him up, defensive end, standing him up, dropping him once in a while. But about 98% of the time, we wanted to rush him because he had such amazing talent. And Fred Bush, the fullback that Bernie had recruited from the East Coast, came out on it was a sprint pass. And Pete Gales was the quarterback, and they're running a sprint pass. And I got bored. This was 1980. Yeah, Tip was there 80, 81. So this was the year before we went to Rose Bowl. But it was Tip's first scrimmage in Kinnick Stadium. And Fred Bush was a fullback that Bernie had recruited. And he was a good player, not a great player, but he was a good player. And they're running a sprint pass with Pete Gales, and Fred Bush cuts. Tip got up, and I'm back out of the way, but I can see the whole thing now. And Tip gets up and starts putting the third-degree black belt on him. Boom, 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 boom. He said, don't you ever, MF, don't you ever cut me. Tip knew he was going to play in the NFL. He knew he had that special talent. Don't you ever cut me. You cut me, I'll break your neck. He was just, I'm looking at him going, oh. I'm just thinking right then, I bet there's no other fullback's going to try to cut Tip in the rest of his career. And there never was. But he was so good on his feet. And here's Andre Tippett, Pro Bowler. Here's Mark Bortz, Pro Bowler. Now, he played for me. We got him out of Partyville, Wisconsin. He was a 4-year starter for me. 235 as a true freshman, but didn't back down. Nobody knocked him off the ball. He was so tough, so physical. And then I remember our offices were in Carver Hawkeye Arena. And Rita, who you guys know, secretary, still there with Kirk, just incredible. Rita Foley, just great. She calls this draft day. And we're getting some work done, but paying attention. We're going to get some guys drafted. And I had George Little that was playing for me. And he's from Duquesne, Pennsylvania. And Alvy and I got him out of there and got Jonathan Hayes to come. Both of them were just sensational players, great Hawks, great NFL. Anyway, we get this call, and Rita goes, it's Don Shula, the Miami Dolphins. And I said, who is it, Rita? Quit yanking my chain. Who the hell is this? One of my buddies, one of my pals. Who is it? She goes, no, it's Don Shula. And I almost picked up the phone going, who the hell is this? Don Shula's not calling me. I pick up the phone. Coach McCarney? Yes, this is Don Shula. I recognize the voice from listening to him all those years in the NFL. He goes, tell me about George Little. We got a pick in 5 minutes in the third round. I said, Coach, he's a little undersized, but he is tough. He's relentless. He's athletic. You'll love him. He's coachable. He's a great teammate. If there was something bad, I'd tell you, there just isn't. By God, that's what I wanted to hear. Thanks. He hung up, and they ended up taking him in the third round. But it was just so much fun. It was just so much fun back in those days. And those guys that were, but I started, here's Tip, here's Bortzy, here's Pat Dean, here's Jimmy Picar, here's all these guys. And it was just a magical lineup. And I'll never forget that year. We played Michigan State in the last home game. Ohio State has to upset Michigan, and then we have to beat Michigan State. And we're not only going to a bowl game first time since 1959, we're going to the Rose Bowl. But Hayden didn't even mention the Rose Bowl one time all week. Neither did any of the assistants. None of us. We didn't even talk about it. All we talked about, the and I was there for every minute of it. All we talked about was beat Michigan State's ass, and we're going somewhere. We're going to go somewhere, hopefully a lot warmer than Iowa City, Iowa. Father Bob was on the microphone. It's late in the game. We come up and stuff them on a 3rd and 1, and the fans are on their feet going nuts. You can't even hardly hear it. We're looking around going, what the hell? We just a routine 3rd down stop, which we do all the time. Father Bob comes on and goes, score out of, with 1 minute to go, score out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Underdog Ohio State. Our quarterback, Art Schleister, just scored the go-ahead touchdown in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Place goes nuts. The ceiling, the whole Kinnick Stadium was nuts. And then he announced the score about 2 minutes later. Of course, we're all pulling our phones back because we want to hear what the hell's the score is. We're up on Michigan State now by 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns then in the 4th quarter. And we're kicking their tail. And then we kicked them worse when they announced the final score. The last 10 minutes of the game, we got 2 or 3 turnovers. Phil Blacher rushed for over 200 yards. And Bud Supple, who was a great friend of my dad's, owned Supple's Flowers there in Iowa City. He must have anticipated we were going to take care of business, and Ohio State was a 10-point underdog, but they're going to upset Michigan because we're all looking up there. I'll never forget it as long as I live. Buddy Supple had boxes and boxes of roses brought into Kinnick Stadium, and they're just throwing them out by the handfuls out of Kinnick Stadium, the press box, into the fans. Never forget it as long as I live. You talk about the hair stand up on the back of your neck. And we just realized we're not only going to bowl game, we're going to Rose Bowl. And after all those years of futility and heartache and tough times, and here's the guy in white pants and sunglasses that said, we're going to scratch where it itches, and we're taking our ass to Pasadena, California. It's one of those memories you never forget.
Yeah, especially you growing up in Iowa City and seeing the losing years and then being part of that turnaround. That must have been just amazing.
Incredible. Just incredible. To this day, it's one of the great. I think I was in 21 bowl games and a national championship and Big Ten championships at Iowa and Wisconsin and bowl championships at Iowa State and North Texas. South Florida, we went to number 2 in the country. Just some of these great thrills. But that thing is just, honest to God, just sitting there talking about it, I get some goosebumps, and it feels like it was just last week. That's how recent it feels and how the impression that it left after all those years of tough years and losing to finally go to the Rose Bowl. But he came in, he said he was going to get it done. He said it's not going to be easy, but we're going to scratch where it itches. We're going to build something special. We're going to be tough. We're going to be physical. We're going to be relentless. We coached it. It's contagious. We knew that being tough, being physical, being relentless, being a great teammate, those things are really contagious. And you just learn so many things under Hayden Fry that way. Like for years, for almost a decade, I had Barry Alvarez right here, and I had Kirk Ferentz right here. And Hayden's famous, one of the famous things that he was so good about everything, just so good. But in all the years that I was with him, I never heard him one time say, Mac, you better start doing this. Alvy, you better start doing this. Snyder, you better start doing this. Bill Brazy, you better start doing. Bill Brazy, Bernie Wyatt, you better start doing. It was never that way at all. It was never. It was a couple of you guys better get your players academically motivated, or I'll fire your ass. A couple of you guys better get your players going to class and being on time. I'll fire your ass. A couple of you players a couple of you coaches aren't getting any commitments out there. I'll fire your ass. So it was always a couple of you guys. And Kirk and Alvarez and I'd be sitting there. We'd have bruised shins from kicking each other under the table because we were, what is he talking about? You? Is he talking about me? That was all part of the psychology. So you'd come out of those meetings going, I wonder if he's talking about me. No, he must be talking about you. But it was all part of the plan to keep you driven, to keep you motivated, to keep you inspired, never be satisfied. You better do your job. He'd always say, man, do you have any idea how long the line of coaches are to come here and coach it out once we start winning? And we're rocking and rolling, and we're winning championships, and we're going to bowl. You have any idea how many coaches like to come to Iowa? Better get your ass in gear. I'll fire you, and there'll be some more guys lined up to come in and take your job. So it worked. It worked. That was part of his magic. That was part of his plan. And we didn't always want to hear it, but it sure worked.
You guys are great coaches already, legendary coaches on that staff that went on and rebuilt programs. And I think that's probably one of the most amazing things is you guys took the worst programs in college football and turned them around. And so what parts of that were part of what you learned at Iowa and how that rebuild happened? Was it you had to go into each program and kind of look at how do we do it a little differently? Or was there a roadmap that you guys were following that you learned from Iowa? Or tell us how you went to Wisconsin and Iowa State and turned those programs around. What was the secret?
Yeah, honest to God, once you've done it and you accomplish it and you do something that never been done and you do something the way that we did it, you just knew that you could do it again. I had two chances to go to Notre Dame with Coach Alvarez. The first year I stayed because Lou and Barry were 5 and 6 that year, and we had a really good year at Iowa. And Hayden did some things to keep me. If you like your assistant, you take care of him. He did a nice job. The next time I'm going to go, because I'm Irish Catholic, it's hard to say no to Notre Dame twice. Notre Dame's rolling now. Barry's the defensive coordinator. They're playing for a national championship down the Orange Bowl against Colorado. Terry Donahue called. I went out and interviewed out there. He offered me a job. I was getting opportunities because of the success of the program, not because of anything that I was special. The success of our program was giving us all opportunities, obviously. I went over and interviewed over in South Bend again with Lou, and Lou offered me a job again. And I went upstairs, and because I remember I went down there in his basement, and Lou goes, "How much money are you making back over at Iowa as a defensive line coach?" I said, "Coach, $62,000. He said, "Hell, I'm going to have to give my defensive coordinator upstairs." Barry was upstairs with Beth, Coach Holtz's wife. He said, "I'm going to have to give him a raise to make more money than you are as a defensive line coach." And I said, "Coach, I love the thought of coming to Notre Dame. I can't take a pay cut. I got young kids." He goes, "Oh, no, I'm just kidding. We'll get you a raise. I got to give that guy upstairs a raise because he's doing a really good job." So I come out of there. I'm all cranked up. I'm going to take the Notre Dame job and go be a part of a national championship at Notre Dame, hopefully. And I get in the car with Barry, and he said, "How'd it go?" I said, "I'm cranked. I think it's a done deal." He said, "Did you tell him you're coming?" I said, "No, you told me not to." And he said, "Here's what the deal is. I just got a call 30 minutes ago, and there's a real good chance I'm going to get the interview up at Wisconsin. I'm one of their guys. I don't know if I'm number 1 or number 10, but I'm going to get an interview. And if I get that job, your ass is coming up as an assistant head coach and defensive coordinator with me at Wisconsin." So now all this is going on. He goes to the Orange Bowl, and Pat Richter came and interviewed him in South Bend. He didn't hear anything for 2 weeks, not a word, not a call, nothing. Meanwhile, Pat's doing his homework and interviewing other guys. 3 nights before they play for the national championship, he calls and says, "Mac, I haven't heard a word. Let me try and get this big ring and win a national championship here. And then you need to come. We'll win a national championship in Notre Dame." So that's how I went to bed that night. I'm going to go and leave after all these 36 years in Iowa City. But it's time for a change, time for a different responsibility, time for working for somebody new. But I was going to make that move. And then the night before, I get a phone call. I can't even hear it, so loud. They're yelling and screaming in the background. It's Barry, and he goes, "I just got the call from Madison, Wisconsin. Get your ass to Wisconsin. You're coming with me. I just got the head job."
Oh.
So then we end up going. Bernie and I went up there and left, and they flew us in, and boom. Here's Brad Childress, future head coach, Minnesota Vikings. Billy Callahan, future head coach, Oakland Raiders, University of Nebraska. His son is the head coach of Tennessee Titans now. He's the offensive line coach, probably the most revered, respected offensive line coach in the NFL. I mean, it was a hell of a staff, and we won 1 game our first year. We went 1-10. So here's this high-powered, big-time staff, and Bernie and me supposedly coming from Iowa, supposed to be hell of coaches and recruiters, and Callahan and Childress, and Paul Jett coached at Texas, was our secondary coach, and we're going to come up, and we win 1 freaking game. We were competitive on defense. We stunk on offense. We probably didn't have 1 offensive player that was a Division I player. It was that pathetic. But we built it, and we built it right. And it was so many of the same things that we did at Iowa, to answer your question. That was the foundation that was built. Just get that DNA in place where you draw a line in the sand. I'm going to fight for my teammates. I'm going to fight for my brothers. I'm going to fight for my coaches. They're going to fight for us. Football is a legal fight. That's what it is. It's a legal fight. So we don't want stupid stuff by saying that, but it's like, we're going to have each other's back. We're going to together do something special. And then 4 years later, we win the first Rose Bowl in 100-year history at Wisconsin, go to Iowa State. Won't get into all the details of it, but they were winless. When you're winless, that's just a record. That's just a record. Everything behind the scenes was worse than I could have ever imagined, other than real good base of fans, like Iowa fans, really good fans. But the budgets, the salaries, the facilities, pathetic. And I didn't even know some of those things when I got there. I asked a lot of questions, but probably not enough. And I don't know if that would have affected it. I don't know. We were rock and rolling at Wisconsin. I loved the job. I loved Madison. But it was hard to say no. They're going to induct Gene Smith, who hired me, into the Hall of Fame at Iowa State here in a few weeks. I'm going to go back for that. He retired at Ohio State, but he hired Billy Finley and I at the same time, 2 months apart. And thank God he did. You go to these national coaches conventions, there's 10,000 coaches every year to this day. Every year, 10,000 coaches, football coaches. And at the time, there was only 124 Division I head coaches. So for an Iowa native to say no to a head job in the state of Iowa, I just couldn't do it. But we took our lumps, and it was a hard job in a lot of ways. But to answer your question, so many of the things that we all learned from Coach Fry, and we molded it and built it together after building a really good foundation built on rock, not sand, not something half-assed, not shortcuts, not cheating, doing it the right way. Then we were able to go do it. I got the opportunity because of our Iowa success to go to Wisconsin. I got the offer at Iowa State because of the success in Iowa and Wisconsin. And honestly, when Urban Meyer had offered me the job to come to Florida, he was the wide receiver coach at Notre Dame with Lou Holtz. He was in the stands when my Iowa State team came down there and played Pittsburgh and won the first bowl game in school history in 2000. We just had a reunion 2 weeks ago in Ames. And Urban never forgot the passion, the enthusiasm, the energy of that team, the heart that they played with, the toughness. He told me that when he offered me the job. He said, I never forgot watching your team. And if you could do that with a whole team, I want you to do that with my defensive line here in Florida. So it's just funny, the carryover sometimes when things are going really well and you're having success that can give you possibly some other opportunities down the road.
Hello, and welcome to our wonderful University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital. This beautiful building, which opened to patients in the early months of 2017, has provided children with the ideal healing environment to match our world-class system of healthcare. We are Iowa's only comprehensive children's hospital, meaning we offer every pediatric subspecialty. We have the UI Stead Family Children's Hospital Press Box, a special viewing space with the city's best view of Kinnick Stadium. Many children and their families have caught a Hawkeye football game from this spot and taken part in the other side of Iowa's greatest tradition, the wave. The ultimate gesture of care and compassion. And the next time you're looking up at our windows, please give a wave.
Yeah, it sounds like you even did it in high school too, right? It sounds like you were on a really bad team to start with, and you guys ended up winning.
Yeah, no, good point. But we'll never take credit for that 0-9 season because we were sophomores. We were sophomores in the varsity. City High, they're good school, lots of good football and basketball and wrestling and good. All the varsity stunk. I think it was the first time in the history of the school that they didn't win a game. They were 0-9, and we were 6-2 on a sophomore team because they weren't moving sophomores up at all. They just didn't do it back then. And then we get to the last game of the year. It was the old Mississippi Valley, and Clyde Bean, who was my football coach and my wrestling coach, he took 11 of our starting offense. We won 6 games that year. Took the starting offense to go see what it's like to be on a big-time varsity game. And they're playing to try and win their first game of the year at the last game of the year. They didn't score a point or getting their ass kicked by Rock Island. He puts us in with about 5 minutes to go, and we went down the field and scored a touchdown, just all sophomores. It felt like we scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. We were ecstatic. He knew what he was doing. Give us a chance to maybe have a little success, get a taste of it. Next year, we won 5. My senior year, it was the last year before playoffs. That was my senior year was fall of 71. They began playoffs in 72. They began the Shrine game in either 72 or 73. So we missed out on that. I don't know if I'd have been in, but we missed out on that. We sure would have been in the playoffs. But I think we finished 2 in one poll, number 3 in another poll, 4, and they had polls then, but we didn't have the playoffs. And we had a great senior year, lost 1 game. To go along with what you meant, that was my first major turnaround, going from the varsity hadn't won a game. We win the championship our senior year, long before I got to Iowa and got to be a part of that with Coach Fry. So that was a lot of fun and real meaningful. And when COVID was going on, we had a committee on the high school, our class, that canceled the reunion just for a class reunion 50 years. And I said, well, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard because of COVID. We've already got players that have died, coaches that have died, teammates that have died. I'm getting our team together. So I get on the phone and just start calling guys. and digging up numbers and calling. And we had 90 some people come back for it. My dad, while he was chief of police, his hobby was taking pictures. And I remember back in those high school days, how special they were, as you guys know. Dad would bring a camera. He'd bring it to practice. He'd bring it to games. He'd bring it to the locker room. Get out of here. Quit taking pictures. Stop it, Dad. I had over 100 pictures for that reunion that he had taken. And I brought him in there, spread them out on tables, just said, have at it. You should have seen the tears and the smiles and the laughs and the stories. My dad had been passed away a few years before that, but I could just tell he was smiling and loving it because all these guys were loving these pictures from those high school days. And it was some great times. I'll always appreciate and respect and love those high school days, like I'm sure you guys did. And had you not had success in high school, a lot of time, you're not always recruiting guys off of great teams, but it sure helps when guys know how to win and they know how to overcome adversity and they know how to handle success. And we were able to do that at City High, and I'll always love the place. Mitch Moore's the new head coach there. He's brought me back a number of times. I was back there when the Hilgenbergs were all there. We were honorary captain. It's just cool to go back. Chuck Long had a fundraiser in June. I was up in Okoboji. Tim Dwight, Kelly O'Brien, Billy Happel, Scott Halverson. We were all back. It was just a bunch of fun. And then when the first time I met Tim Dwight years ago, I said, "You're a hell of a player. Congratulations." And this is after this incredible career at Iowa and in the NFL. I said, "Tim, I idolize you. I wish you would have visited Wisconsin. Would have loved to have had you on our team, but you made a great decision. But going back to high school, I don't know if you would have played on my team back in 1971. I don't know if you'd have been able to start on that." We laughed. I was just yanking his chain a little bit. We laughed. Yeah. We laughed. But it's always good to see him, what a career he's had, and what a great young man he is. Another great little Hawk.
Yeah, definitely.
I had a question on that. So I went to City High too, and Clyde Bean, I think he was still there, maybe as wrestling coach, but he was backing away from that a little bit. I had Larry Brown as my coach. Again, I'm sure he put a good word in at Iowa to say, look at this kid. Yeah. He works hard. He's not quite there yet, but he's going to develop, give him a shot there. Always thankful for that. I think I first saw Wisconsin on the radar because I think Michael Rohn was at City High and you guys brought him up there. And that was a surprise. And I think that was like maybe a pretty big get for you guys because he was a pretty good athlete. And then all of a sudden he goes to Wisconsin football. Why would you go up there? And he must have known something, or you guys showed him that kind of pathway of where the program was going to go. And
exactly. You're exactly right, Brian. And I knew the family. I knew the Rohn family. His dad was postman, mailman, knew the family, loved him on tape. Larry Brown was his coach. Larry's one of the best I'd ever been around. You were fortunate to play for him. He was fortunate to have you in the program. Just special guy. He was a sophomore coach when we were on the varsity, when we were at City High. But I brought him back. I wanted him around our guys, and he came in. We had a blast, and just an incredible coach in person, incredible success. Anyway, so Iowa's dragging their feet. They don't offer. Iowa State's dragging their feet. They don't offer. Illinois is dragging their feet. These people are calling. There's a big difference between a phone call and letters and an offer. They didn't offer. And I told Barry Alvarez, I said, this kid's a steal. And I said, they're messing around, dragging their feet in Iowa City. He'll be a 3-year starter at least, Alvia. Mark my word. I've watched this kid. I've seen a whole bunch, basketball, football. I think he was in track too, but I know basketball, football. I watched him. This kid's got talent. He's athletic. He's tough. He's coachable. He's a great student. What am I missing? And we got him to come with us.
Nothing.
He was a huge contributor on a Rose Bowl championship team. Got a bunch of years with the Houston Texans. Yep. Did a bunch of years in the NFL. Great. I loved him. We had a 25-year reunion 3 or 4 years ago, and Rona was back, and he's doing great and loving life, and he's still living in California, I think, but just doing well, and you just love it. It's a great school. But I will say this, because they opened West High, without getting into some stupid, childish, goofy stuff, they opened West High when we were still at City High. And, of course, I grew up, Tom Lepick and I, Lep was a wrestler and we grew up 3 houses apart. Lepick, Craig, a realtor. Been kicking butt in real estate for decades. Lep and I are best friends. And so the street we grew up on, we're 2 or 3 blocks from City High. So they're going to open up West High. We play as sophomores. You think we're going to get our ass beat by West High? These guys have just opened a school. And we grew up with some of those guys, obviously. Played them in Southmore, beat them. Came back the next year, the boot. The first time we played for the boot. It was Mike Holm was the player on the team, and it was one of his football shoes that they bronzed, and that ended up being the boot.
Okay.
Beat that ass again. Our senior year, we think we're going to lose. We're going to finish up 3-0 and put a lot of meaning behind the best go to City High and the rest go to West. So we won all 3 times we played them. But all these years later, those games, those rivalries, anytime you can play for a trophy. At Iowa State, it was the Cyhawk. At Iowa, Minnesota, it was Floyd Rosedale. Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Paul Bunyan Axe. Florida and Florida State, we had that trophy. I just loved coaching in those trophy games. And City High and West was always real meaningful. Unfortunately, our Little Hawks got their butts kicked this year by West Time.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been a good rivalry for a while.
Great rivalry. Damn.
When
damn
Reese Morgan came over there, then he
Yeah.
brought that program back up, and
Oh, yeah.
they've
Oh,
been
yeah.
competitive ever since, back and forth.
No question. And of course, North Liberty, that was my first home when I was with Hayden. I built a home out there. It was Kozier's Grocery, 2 bars, a post office. That was about it.
Jeez.
Now I can't even hardly find my house out there at North Liberty. It's just exploded. I stay in touch with coaches back there a lot. They're telling me that Liberty and West Time might be 2 of the best teams in the whole state of Iowa this year, both
Yeah.
those teams. But didn't mean to bore you,
Amazing.
Nick.
No,
You're
that's
probably
great.
not.
No, I hear all these old school stories about West and City, and I love it. Yeah, Reese Morgan went to the same high school my mom did. Yeah, there's a whole
Wow.
interconnection of all this shit. Yeah, so
See, when I first got to know him, I was recruiting Doug Book out of Benton Community High School. And that's when I was up and I'd watch practice. I'm going, this is a hell of a coach. I came back, told Coach Friday, Reese Morgan, he's a hell of a coach. So long story short, I ended up getting the head job at Iowa State. Guess who was at practice all 12 years I was at Iowa State? The very first practice at Iowa State every year, Reese Morgan. He'd pull up with his wife. She'd sit in the car. She'd do her thing in the car, and Reese would come to practice. That was a tradition every year. And so the success he was having at West High, no surprise. The success he had at Iowa, no surprise. That's one of the best coaches, one of the best people I'd ever been around. Reese Morgan, one of my all-time favorites.
Speaking of Doug Book, so he shared a story that he went on a recruiting trip to Arizona State, and he said he got in his car out of the airport, and someone pulled up next to him and started showing a sign and turning on their dome light to try to get his attention. And it said you were in the car with a sign of something like "Come to Iowa" or
we want Doug Book.
Yeah.
Great to be a Hawk.
Yeah, I always thought that was an amazing story. Yeah,
You got to do what you got to do within the rules.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
He didn't deny it.
Don't be breaking any rules. Breaking those NC2A rules, I'll fire your ass. Don't be doing that. But whatever it takes
That's
within
awesome.
rules. And then he'd come around at nighttime, and we'd be in. Everybody's there. I had a quadruple bypass a few years ago. I had a major stroke, and then when I finally retired, I was watching this show, and they said one of the biggest issues and one of the biggest problems that people have when they have strokes and heart issues is sleep deprivation. And I told my wife, I said, well, I qualify for that because I just went 4 decades with sleep deprivation. But Hayden would come down late at night. Nobody went home until Hayden went home. Nobody, not a chance. And nobody going home until Coach Fry come down the hallway and go, about time to take it to the house, isn't it? About time to take it to the house. And we always thought, because he had that big, huge leather couch in there, Coach, I'm just being honest now. I'm looking up to heaven. We knew he was napping on that couch in there a lot. But come out, it might be 11, might be 11:30, might be midnight, might be 12:30. And you're just going on adrenaline and coffee and Coca-Cola, and you're not getting much sleep. Then he'd come by. But before that, he'd always come around about 7:30, 8:30. Any of you guys getting any commitments? Anybody getting any commitments? And you guys, no, Coach, we haven't gotten one since you came and asked that same thing 30 minutes ago. He was just always hoping and wants you to close the deal, get your guys. He made it so competitive, just being honest. And it was built that way. And the other one that was so good at that was Barry Alvarez. And the other one that was so good at that I was around was Urban Meyer. They're in the College Football Hall of Fame. But to make it so competitive on your staff, who's the best recruiter? Who's the best coach? Who makes the best adjustments? Who builds the best relationships? Who does the best job of raising money, helping outside the office? There weren't general managers. You didn't have all these. We had staff meetings and there was 12 to 15 coaches. Now you go in there, there's 50. It's crazy how big these staffs are. but we always had a lot of responsibilities off the field. It was a long list because now they have people that take care of that. And nowadays it's just coach and recruit. Coach your guys and recruit. And you don't have to mess with all that, which it really is nice, a lot better. And then it's opened up more jobs in administration, director of operations, general managers, recruiting. You guys have seen it, I'm sure. Recruiting offices, they got 6, 8, 10 people in recruiting offices now.
Wow.
And we used to have one recruiting coordinator. You know who it was at Iowa? Bernie Wyatt. He was the recruiting coordinator, and he coached the defensive ends. That was the guy. And now they have complete staffs for that. Strength coaches used to be 1 or 2. Now they get 6, 8, 10, 12 of those guys. It's amazing. But we all have great memories from our years at Iowa. I'm sure you guys do. Incredible contributions that you guys made. Both of you were real major success stories. And the neat thing is you can always be proud about going back and proud of what you accomplished, your careers that you had. One of the things I love the most in recent years, I've been to Iowa, I've been to Iowa State, been to Florida, I've been to North Texas, I've been to Wisconsin. I was at Iowa State a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to Iowa soon. I'm going to Wisconsin. Every time I'm going back to Iowa State, as I mentioned, because Gene Smith's getting inducted, every time I go back, you just love seeing your former players. You just love it. You guys get to go back and see your former teammates whenever you do it. It's just something about it. You see these guys. It's funny how it works. You recruit guys like both of you were that have real good work ethics. Of course, you got to have talent, but you got real good work ethics. You're loyal. You're hardworking. You're a real good teammate. You got a lot of character. You handle adversity. You handle success. You don't get too carried away with yourself. And then you see these guys go on in life like both of you that are real successful in their personal, family lives, professional lives. And you go, you wonder why we won football games? Because we had, for the most part, a whole team of those kind of guys that were real driven. And then you also wonder why I get calls to this day. I still get calls about guys that are interviewing for other jobs, bigger jobs, better jobs, in coaching, out of coaching, have nothing to do with football, but they love hiring athletes because they're driven and they want to be good and they don't accept losing. And it's not my bad and it's okay. It's all right to get your ass kicked. No, it's not. They're usually really competitive and they usually want to be the best at what they do. And it's amazing as a head coach. I always really enjoyed doing that. And for the most part, I just always told it like it was. And that usually was very positive about your guys, that CEOs, COOs, other head coaches, other people, NFL personnel, people calling about your guys just to be so positive about the careers that they had. But back to what I was saying, like you guys know, anytime you go back to Iowa City, I'm sure you'll love it. Go back and see your teammates, see former coaches. It's also sad because former players have passed away, coaches have passed away. You miss them. I had a thing made at Iowa State. I told them, I said, we're going to this 2000 reunion. They never won a bowl game in 100 years. Johnny Majors went to 2 bowl games, lost him. Earl Bruce went to 2 bowl games, lost him. We went to the first one in 2001. Now they're doing it all the time. It's the norm like it is at Iowa. But somebody had to be the first one in 100 years. But I wanted to put a board together of the coaches that had passed and the players that had passed and just keep it real simple. But right when we walk into the reunion, just to say, we miss you, gone but not forgotten, we'll always love you. Thanks for all that you did. And it was really cool that people loved it. And they were taking pictures. And I had coaches' wives that had lost their husbands, families of players that had passed away. And the older you get, obviously, unfortunately, more of that happens. But to me, it was always really important to honor the past, live the present, and always try to build a great future. And I was so fortunate to have these great opportunities in my career. And so much of it, as you guys know, in life is timing, just the timing of the whole thing. It's so funny because Kirk and I are real close. We worked together for a decade, coached against each other for many years. We always stay in touch. I just got a text from him yesterday. And I've heard him say it. You guys have too. I didn't even think about being a head coach. I didn't really want to be a head coach. And all of a sudden, here he is breaking Woody Hayes' coaching record for the most wins in the history of the Big Ten. How amazing is that? The wins are one thing, which is really incredible, but it's the lives he's impacted. It's the lives that Hayden Fry impacted that mean more than the wins because they changed lives. They didn't just impact them. They changed lives in most cases, many cases. Most of the time where they really changed the trajectory of young men's lives and people's lives. And that's the thing you got to be so proud of.
Yeah, it's an amazing influence these guys have had. And you yourself as well. A lot of people try to get me into the conversation of, oh, when's he going to retire? We haven't won this game. We haven't done these things. And I was like, the thing I'm most proud of being part of this group is I can meet a guy that plays now. I can meet a guy that played 5 years ago, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's the same person, same values, same stuff. That's the thing I'm most proud of, to be in that situation. It's like, yeah, we're not going to win 5 national championships in a row or those type of things, but just that quality of people, I think, is really important that way.
And then you're exactly right. And then the people that he's got around him, I know Seth Wallace real well. I coached against, Kirk and I both coached against Phil Parker. Michigan State, hell of a player at Michigan State. We coached against him. And just the people that he surrounds himself with. LeVar Woods recruited the hell out of him. Just as classy as they come, along with being one of the best special teaching coaches in the country. Tell you a quick story. Seth Wallace grew up in Grinnell, Iowa. That's where he's from. He was the recruiter when Kirk first hired him. I think he was a GA when he started, and then Kirk got him into recruiting. So my daughter Jillian went to Iowa. My oldest, all my brothers and sisters, there were 2 boys, 2 girls. We all graduated from Iowa. My oldest daughter Jillian from there. Melanie was at Iowa State when we were there, and then she transferred to South Florida and graduated from there. And then Shane graduated from North Texas when I was coaching there. Jillian got to know Seth real well. When she was working for him in this recruiting office, Kirk hired her, of course, but she was going to work with Seth. And Jillian, I remember one of the first times after she'd been with him a couple of weeks, said, Dad, this guy's going to really be special someday. You ought to try and hire him sometime. He's really going to be good. And he was a new young guy in the recruiting office. And then everything he's done, he's just taken those steps up the ladder, improving more responsibilities. He's never had an assistant head coach. He named him assistant head coach a year ago. But to finish the story, Seth grew up in Grinnell. I had a kid named Jack Whitmer from Grinnell, played with Seneca Wallace, Lane Danielson, all those guys. That 2002 team that we were behind 24-7 and won 36-31. Jack had over 100 yards of receptions.
When you went to leave Iowa, how did Hayden take that A? And then I guess also, like, when you left Wisconsin, you were pretty close to Hayden being done too. Were you thinking about the Iowa job? There's a lot of dynamics going on at that point, right? With moving around.
No, it's a real good question, a real fair one. It was really hard. I mentioned earlier, I spent 36 years in Iowa State. I grew up a Hawkeye. I grew up sneaking into games when all the security was snow fences. And that when we were 5 and 6 and 7 years old, and just jumping over or run through those snow fences, go sit in the grass. That was my whole world was Iowa. But back then, nowadays, everybody's looking for the young guru. Back then, when I left to go be a coordinator with Barry, I was the second youngest coordinator in college football. When I took the job at Iowa State, I was the second youngest head coach in the country. Now they're looking at guys in their 20s. But that was really hard. Kirk and I had talked, to be honest with you, Nick, during the season, and we'd been together all those years and loved coaching against each other in practice and loved recruiting together. And we just have always had a real great friendship, mutual bond, mutual respect. But we were both getting ready for a move, if that makes sense. It was just time to make a move, and we didn't know when or where, because Barry hadn't offered anything at Notre Dame. Lou Holtz hadn't. The Wisconsin thing hadn't happened yet. Don Morton was still coaching up there. But we had talked one night late, and we were both just saying, if the right thing came up this year, we might be ready to make a move. That was all we were doing. And we weren't calling. We weren't out there politicking for jobs, any of that BS. We had one of the great jobs in the country at Iowa. We were going to keep winning. We knew that. And that was a young team in '89 with 95% of that team coming back. So that made it even harder to leave because that whole team was coming back, which ended up being in the Rose Bowl. We knew they were going to be really good. But I just felt like back then you had to show that you could be in charge of half a team as a leader, as a coach, as a recruiter, as a speaker, as a communicator, being able to make adjustments, being able to handle all those things that go with being in charge of half a football team. So that was really what my next move was probably going to be. I just didn't know when or where. And then all this thing started breaking at Wisconsin. So at the same time, I ended up leaving to go to Wisconsin really hard. But I had communicated the whole thing about Notre Dame, about UCLA, about the possibility at Wisconsin. I told Bill Brazier and Hayden Fry and my parents. They knew all of it, all along. Bernie hadn't said anything to Hayden until Barry got the job. And then Bernie told Hayden that I'm going to go up and talk to Barry. That's all I'm going to do. I just want to go talk to Barry. So I mentioned earlier, they had a Learjet waiting. They win the national championship. They go back to Madison. They fly us in. Pat Richter's, we're in the indoor facility and it's just jam-packed with Wisconsin, Midwest media, and Iowa media, because Barry Alvarez spent all those years at Mason City High in Iowa, and all the media is there. So we go in, Pat Richter grabs the two of us and brings us up in front of everybody on this stage. I had already told Hayden and Braze and my parents that I'm leaving, I'm going to take the job. And I met with them. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I mean, saying goodbye to Hayden and Braze after what they did for me and my parents that I'd spent my whole life with, but it was a move I had to make. Bernie was just going up supposedly just to talk to Hayden. So Pat Richter grabs us, the AD, brings us up front. Barry goes, here's two of my best friends, two of the best coaches, two of the best recruiters in college football. They're coming with me at Wisconsin. I was already made the decision. All Bernie was going to do was talk to Barry. He didn't know the job. He didn't know salary. He knew nothing. And next thing, all the media's up there with the microphone, sticking them in front of our faces. And we're doing interviews. And Bernie looks over at me and he goes, that freaking Alvy, he got me. That freaking Alvy, he got me. And that was it. So then we go to the hockey game, sold out. They're chanting Barry. Bernie has yet to call Hayden and get him on the phone. Bernie has yet to get a hold of Barb on the phone. He hasn't talked to his wife or his boss to tell him he's going to take the job at Wisconsin. The story breaks, and they both find out about it on the news. So Barb got over it okay. Hayden never really got over it. He was pissed. Hayden was fine with me, with Braze. He didn't want me to leave. He told me the same thing that he told Barry Alvarez. Braze, he's going to retire soon. You're going to be the next defensive coordinator. I'm not going very long. You come in and do the job as a coordinator, you'll be the next head coach at Iowa. He told Barry the same thing. I don't blame him. As a head coach, you don't want to lose assistants, especially if you feel like they can do a good job for you. But that was the move I just had to make, if that makes sense. And yeah, sure. Kirk took the head job at Maine, as you guys know. Went out to Maine, of all places. He got the experience to be a head coach. It didn't work out. And then he ended up back in the NFL, and lo and behold, he ends up back as the head coach at the University of Iowa. Leaving Wisconsin, we were rolling Rose Bowl. We were going to the Hall of Fame Bowl the year that I took the job. Great respect. We were winning. We were recruiting. The facilities were major improved. We could just keep winning. I knew we were going to keep winning. We had a hell of a staff. But Barry called me and said, Gene Smith just called. And I said, who's that? He said, it's the AD at Iowa State. And I said, what's he want? He said, he wants to talk to you. I said, about what? I'm a dumbass. I said, about what? He said, Jim Walden just got fired 2 days ago. He wants to talk to you about coming in and interviewing for the head job. I spent my whole career trying to beat their ass in recruiting and on the field. And now they're going to maybe even bring me in for the interview for the head job. So I wasn't jumping up and down about it. And they were winless and they were terrible. And we'd played them twice at Wisconsin. And I got a game ball from the first year. We beat them 7-6. And it was two bad offenses, really bad offenses. But we won 7-6. I still got the game ball. And then you're thinking, well, this is big time. Gene Smith's coming in. We're probably going to go, because I'd heard all these things. You're going to this big fancy hotel. You're going to go to this lounge in this big fancy airport. You know where I interviewed for the head job at Iowa State? Denny's in Madison, Wisconsin. Denny's for about 3 hours. And then Gene didn't show his hand, disappeared. That was it. Barry said, how'd it go? I said, I can't rate myself. I don't know. I thought it went okay. I have no idea. Didn't hear anything for about 3 days. Gene calls, says, listen, I want to bring you to campus. You're going to be one of our finalists. We're going to bring some guys in. So we had to work that around my schedule. Said, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. And so I flew in, interviewed. As I mentioned earlier, I went to Dr. Jiski's office. There were 22 people, 23 people in there. I didn't know it was going to be that. I thought I was going to go meet with the president. But when I went in there, I just said, listen, I'm going to tell you some things you probably don't want to hear. I'm going to tell you some things you probably do want to hear. But I've been coaching and recruiting against Iowa State for many years. The first problem that you have at this place is no one believes they can beat Iowa in recruiting. And whenever Iowa comes in and offers, the white flag goes right up. Nobody in this program has ever said no to Iowa to come to Iowa State. That's your first problem. And I said, so if I get offered the job, I don't know if I'm your number 1 or your number 10. I've got no idea. But whoever you hire better draw a line in the sand and start recruiting Iowa kids and start believing that you can beat Iowa kids. Otherwise, you're going to keep getting your ass kicked. You're going to be an embarrassing program for a lot more years. That's how the interview started. And I knew then was at start, I'm thinking to myself, when I'm talking like that, just like that, I'm thinking, I'm either going to get a hell of a shot at this job or they're going to run me out of Ames as fast as they can. So anyway, spent the day, all that boom, 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 boom. The vice president and Gene flew me back. That was it. Nothing, didn't hear anything for 3 more days. Finally get a call from Gene Smith. He said, "You have an agent?" And I said, "No." "Why?" He said, "Because you're going to need one. You're going to be offered the head job here at Iowa State." So that's how it all happened. But that wasn't easy to leave Wisconsin either, because Barry and I were really close and we were loving working together and we were having so much fun. And you guys have been there. Madison's a really good town. It's a great place to live and to work from. And I knew from being there and building the foundation, we're just going to keep winning and winning big. And here it is, 2025. With the exception, honestly, of the last couple of years, I don't know what's going on up there. I don't know. I don't like watching what I'm seeing up there. With the exception of the last couple of years, for the most part, all they do is win. They have NFL players. They go to bowl games. They challenge for championships. Bielema made one of the biggest mistakes he should have ever made in his life, obviously. Went to 2 or 3 Rose Bowls, won them, and then went to Arkansas. Beals was a 200-pound walk-on for me at Iowa as a defensive end. He's grown up through the years. Ended up being a captain nose guard at Iowa. Yep. But anyway, I'm just so thrilled with the opportunities that I had in life and the relationships and the amazing memories, the incredible turnarounds when people say you can't, and we did. As you guys, there was probably people that doubted you could go be big-time punters, kickers, special team guys in the Big Ten, and you made them look stupid and silly for the ones that didn't believe in you. And in life, it's fun to do that when people just don't think you can do something and you really get it done. It's a lot of fun.
On that same line, so at 98, you beat Hayden. Tell us like how that felt, because not only did you beat Hayden, but you broke this long losing streak of Iowa and Iowa State. So just talk us through that experience and the feeling you had there, because we were upset as fans, but also there's a little part of it proud for you that you were able to do that.
I was on the other end of many of those with Hayden, just mismatches, ugly, embarrassing. I remember going over there one year, Jim Kreiner's coaching, and it's 42-3 at half, and you're telling your guys, now stay focused. They can come back. We got to keep the accelerator down, and they're looking at you like, are you nuts? They stink, and we're really good, and they ain't coming back. We're just going to keep kicking their ass. They don't have to say it. You can just see in their eyes. But in 98, we went over. The year before, it was Tim Dwight's senior year, 97. They came to Ames. They threw a touchdown pass late in the game, go up over 60 points. Coach Fry came to me and said, "Mac, I love you like a son." He'd always say that. He always said it. We had a great relationship. I stayed in touch with him frequently right up until the time he died. "Love you like a son, Mac. Love you like a son." But that quarterback shouldn't have done that. He audibleized to that last touchdown pass. I didn't say a word, but I knew there was no audible. I just knew it's Iowa State, and it wasn't like I can't stand Mac. I'm going to try and embarrass him, but it's Iowa State, and if I can score 100, I'll score 100 on him. But some of those guys were a part of that, and they never forgot it. We were 29.5-point underdogs in 98. We had lost to a good TCU team the week before, who won 8 games that year and went to a bowl game. But our fans were disappointed that we lost it. But I just had a really good feeling that week. I don't know why. I don't know why. I just had a really good feeling all week. The preparation, the focus. I know we had no business feeling that strong about it going into it. Jay Norvell was with me. He was a captain for us on our 85 Rose Bowl team. He was our wide receiver coach at Wisconsin. He was on my staff at Iowa State when we first got there the first few years. Then he left my staff after 97 to go to Tony Dungy's staff with the Indianapolis Colts. The last thing he did, it was hard to say goodbye. We're really close. And then his brother Aaron played for me at Wisconsin too. He brought in a $100 bottle of champagne and just said, "Save this for a real special celebration, Mac." And I put it away, and I never did anything with it. Getting on the bus that day, I'd never done it before. I put it in my Nike bag that I carried on the bus, and I took it. I just had this gut feeling that we were going to shock them and get it done. And we blocked a punt early. You guys know what that can do. It doesn't guarantee a victory, but boy, it helps. And it was one of the biggest plays, I think, in turning around that entire rivalry after 15 years of humiliating, embarrassing ass kickings by Iowa. We won 27-9. We went on to win 5 in a row. My 12 years there, we were 6-6, beat Iowa twice when they were in the top 10. It's a real good rivalry now. But when one team just dominates the other one for 15 years, there's no rivalry. It's fun for the Hawks and the Hawk players and coaches and fans, but it's just embarrassing for one team to get drilled like that all the time. That really helped. And then even though we didn't win that year, I think Gene Smith said, you know what, this guy needs some more time. This thing was as bad as it could ever possibly be in college football. Not for a pat on my back, but that's the truth. He knew it. This guy needs some more time, and they gave us some more time. But that was validation. We're going in the right direction. We need to keep recruiting better players, and we need better depth. We need to keep improving as coaches. I need to keep getting better as a head coach, but it's going in the right direction. And then it turned into an incredible rivalry. And I got to coach in 25 of them on both sides. I'll be honest with you, I really miss coaching in that game. I love coaching in that game, both sides. I told Kurt when things didn't work out here recently, I said, listen, we both know the feeling. You're at the top of the mountain. You feel so fantastic by winning it. You're lower than whale shit when you lose it, but you got to put that son of a gun behind you because the next one's right around the corner. And there ain't nothing you can do to change the outcome. All you can do is learn from it, winning and losing. And he agreed 1,000%. But I miss coaching in that game. That thing's special. I don't give a damn about conferences, alignments, transfer portals, NIL, TV contracts. Don't ever drop that one. Long after the ass is gone, I hope they hang on to that and keep coaching and playing that one. It's so good for the state of Iowa. And it was not played for 40 years, and then we renewed it in 1977. Hawks won on national TV, 12-10. Tom Russ from Dubuque, Iowa, was the MVP and the defensive MVP of the game. That was the game where Earl Bruce came out after pregame warm-up and had Beat Iowa on his jerseys. He had them sitting in the lockers and came out with Beat Iowa on the front of the jerseys. And we beat that ass 12-10, and that was a huge win as the rivalry was renewed after 40 years.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a great place to end up, I think. That's thanks a lot for
thank you so much.
coming on and all the stories.
Thank you, and great job with what you're doing with this and bringing former players, coaches. It sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yep.
It's fantastic to remember and refresh and relive those memories. And congrats to both of you in your professional lives and the things you're doing. And congrats on your career at Iowa. I know both of you did a hell of a job and are well remembered, thought of, and well respected back in Iowa City. So I'm really looking forward to going back. Just really looking forward. There's going to be the defensive linemen that were on my 85 Rose Bowl team, but then Paulie Hufford, all Big Ten, Clay Hake. I think Pat Dean's coming back, George Little, all these guys are coming back because they're letting them bring some guys back too that had graduated by 85, but Pat Peterson's on the committee. So we're getting some of my defensive linemen to come back, and it'll be a lot of fun, and probably be a hell of a game that day too. As long as we beat the Hoosiers, it'll be a great day.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have a
And
little extra juice there.
Yeah, for sure. And congrats on all your success.
Yeah,
Brought a lot to
absolutely.
Iowa,
I'm really
football,
lucky.
the state of Iowa and all that stuff. So
Yeah, really lucky. I couldn't have ever
Congratulations.
dreamed of the opportunities that I had. Kirk and I feel the same way. Neither one of us ever felt like we had much talent, but nobody was going to outwork us. And we always were so appreciative of the opportunities that we got starting way back in those early years with Coach Fry, and the rest is history. And as you guys, just to be a part of those years and remember and reflect and appreciate those, it's pretty special. So anyway, guys, take care. And anything you ever need, don't hesitate to call. And I'm sure you get through this and go, thank God I got through that damn thing. We don't have to listen to him anymore.
No, we love it.
That's
I could
great.
have gone for
Great
hours.
stories.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, this is amazing.
Congrats to your brother. I think I mentioned to you before, Nick, your brother, who was a much better player than I ever was. We got inducted at the same time into Iowa High School Hall of Fame. Got to see he and his wife, and what a phenomenal career he had. Great family, though. What a great family, man. Great family.
Yeah, fun to watch that whole career and all that. Just crazy. His name's on the stadium now. It's been a wild ride. So really awesome. Yeah. And congrats on the induction too. That's awesome.
That was fun. Yeah, a lot of fun. I've been lucky to get inducted in some Hall of Fame things, but it was never at the Iowa High School. So when it all happened, I said, how's this whole thing take place? They said the administration at your high school is the ones that have to get the whole thing started. They have to start the process. And if the administration doesn't do it, then people can slide under here, slide under there. They all said, you should have been in a long time ago. I said, I wasn't anything special. We were first team All-State and you guys won a championship. You should have been in a long time ago. But I didn't even know what the criteria was. It's got to start with the administration. I never knew that. And if they're changing administrators or they're changing principals, they may not know anything about your career. And if somebody doesn't bring it to their attention, then you could get passed over. So I didn't know anything about it. I was thrilled, and it was really cool to go in at the same time your brother did from our high school careers.
And we'll see you at Indiana because we'll come over.
Okay,
both
good.
of us will be there for that game. So
Yeah, if you see me from somewhere, throw a dirt cloud or something, hit me in the back of the head.
we'll do.
holler at me and I'll get the team a chance to say hi.
All right, we'll do.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
appreciate it.